In the last couple of steps, we have created our first Hello World REST APIs. In this step, let's understand what's happening in the background. And to be able to understand some of the magic with Spring Boot, what we'll do is we'll enable debug logging. I'll go to our application.properties and I'll configure logging.level.org.spring-framework. The default level is info. However, what we'll do is we'll put it at debug level and save this. You should now see a lot more information printed in the log. Let's now use this log to understand what's happening in the background. One of the important things to remember is the logs keep changing frequently. Even with minor versions in Spring Boot, some of the times there are log changes. So don't really worry if you don't see the exact logs. Let's get started with the first question. How are our requests getting handled? Whenever we talk about Spring MVC, we are talking about a friend controller pattern. What would happen is that all our requests are first going to something called dispatcher servlet. Earlier, we executed a request to localhost 8080 hello world bean. And we also executed requests to hello world. Irrespective of the URL you are making use of, all requests when we talk about Spring MVC are being handled by dispatcher servlet. This is called the friend controller pattern. Basically, dispatcher servlet is the first thing that your request goes to, irrespective of the URL you are making use of. Why? Because dispatcher servlet is mapped to the root URL. If you search in the logs and if you search for mapping servlets or dispatcher servlet, if you search the logs, you should see something called mapping servlets in here. So you can see that the dispatcher servlet is being mapped to the URL root. If you're not able to see the logs, then go to right-click preferences and make sure that you do not have any limit on the console output. So if you remove the limit on the console output and if you restart the application, you should see something like this. If you search for dispatcher servlet, you should see the URL of root mapped to it. So all the requests first go to the dispatcher servlet. And once dispatcher servlet gets the request, it would map the request to the right controller. Right now we only have one controller. So dispatcher servlet will look at the URL and the dispatcher servlet would map it to the right controller method. So if you are sending it to /hello world, then dispatcher servlet knows that the hello world method is the right one for it. If you are sending a request to the hello-world-bean URL, dispatcher servlet knows that hello world bean method can handle that and it will get the response from the hello world bean and return it back. Now you might be wondering, who is configuring dispatcher servlet? The dispatcher servlet is configured because of something called auto configuration. Auto configuration is one of the most important Spring Boot features. Based on the classes which are available in the class path, Spring Boot would automatically detect the fact that we are building a web application, a REST API, and therefore it automatically configures a dispatcher servlet. If you search for dispatcher servlet auto configuration in the logs, you should see a bean which is being created. So this has matched and therefore this would go ahead and configure a dispatcher servlet for us. The next question is, how does hello world bean object get converted to JSON? Earlier, we executed this request, localhost 8080 hello world bean message hello world. So the request goes to dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet would check what are the URLs that are available and it will be able to map and it will be able to detect that the /hello world bean is mapped to this method. So it would execute this method and over here we are returning a Java bean back. How does it get converted to JSON? There are two very, very important parts that are involved. Number one is at response body. Next one is the configuration of Jackson HTTP message converters. Let's start with response body. Over here, we are configuring the annotation at REST controller. At REST controller, if you click it and go inside, control click and go inside or command click and go inside, you'll be able to see that this has the annotation at response body. Basically, what we are telling is that this bean should be returned as is. And when we return the bean as is, there is message conversion which would happen. The default conversion which is set up by Spring Boot Autoconfiguration is using Jackson HTTP message converters. And this is also a result of auto-configuration. If you search for Jackson HTTP message converters configuration, let's go in here and search your auto-configuration results. You should see something called Jackson HTTP message converters configuration. This is automatically configured for REST API by Spring Boot. So the hello world bean is getting converted to JSON because of our @response body annotation and the fact that Jackson HTTP message converters are auto-configured by Spring Boot. Number 3, who is configuring error mapping? What do I mean? Let's go in here and type in a wrong URL. Instead of hello world bean, let's say I make a mistake and type in hello world bean -1. You get a white label error page. It says this application has no explicit mapping for /error. And it's saying 404 is the status. Now, who's configuring this error page? The error page is also a result of auto-configuration. So you'd see something called error MVC auto-configuration. If you'd search the logs, you'd see something called error MVC auto-configuration. And if you open up error MVC auto-configuration class, if you scroll down a little, you can see the text in here. So this is where our white label error page is coming in from. So this is where our text is coming in from, white label error page. There is no error mapping. So this error MVC auto configuration class is made use of to configure a error page automatically whenever an unknown URL is typed into the browser. The last question we'll be talking about is how are all the jars available? Spring, Spring MVC, Jackson, Tomcat. We saw that our application is running directly in Tomcat. We did not do anything to set up Tomcat at all. So how are these all available to us? The answer to that is because of starter projects. When we created this project, we included Spring Web in our dependencies. And Spring Web is what is called Spring Boot Starter Web. If you go over to our pom.xml, you'd see Spring Boot Starter Web in here. And if I look at the pom.xml for this, you would see that there are a number of dependencies which are defined in here. Spring Boot Starter, Spring Boot Starter JSON. This is what brings in JSON conversion with Jackson by default. This is what brings in Tomcat. And this Spring Web dependency which is present in here is the one which brings in Spring MVC. So you can see that all the dependencies that we are making use of are coming in because of just one starter, Spring Boot Starter Web. So at a high level, the important thing to understand is that the starter projects bring in all the dependencies. So Spring, Spring MVC, Jackson Framework, Tomcat, all of them are coming into your project because of starter projects. And Spring Boot Auto Configuration does rest of the magic. Spring Boot Auto Configuration looks at the class path, looks at all the jars and the classes that are available in the class path. And based on what is available in the class path, it can auto configure a lot of things. By default, whenever you have Spring Boot Starter Web in the configuration, Tomcat Web Server would be auto-configured. Dispatcher Servlet would be auto-configured. The bean to JSON conversion would be auto-configured using Jackson. And an error page is also auto-configured for you. So all the magic that is happening in the application right now is because of Spring Boot and the two most important features of Spring Boot, starter projects and auto-configuration. I don't want to continue to see all the logs in here. So what I do is I'd go back to the info level and save this out. I'm sure you're having a wonderful time and I'll see you in the next step.